And joining me now is a very special guest. Ravi Agarwal is editor-in-chief of Foreign Policy, one of the world's leading global affairs magazines. He joins me from New York. Ravi, appreciate your joining us. What is your sense of what the US President Donald Trump has done with India over the last 48 hours, in particular hiking tariffs to 50%, linking it to India buying Russian oil? What is Donald Trump really up to here?
Rajdeep, I'll be honest, it makes no strategic sense to me. For the last 25 years, as is well known to you and your viewers, the US-India relationship has become stronger and stronger. And there's bipartisan agreement, whether it's the BJP in Congress, whether it's Democrats and Republicans, that this is a relationship that just made sense for both sides to improve and to make stronger over time. What Trump has done on many levels, whether it is cozying up to Pakistan, whether it is rupturing the India-US trade relationship, and now these secondary sanctions on India because of its purchases of Russian oil, it makes no sense to me for several reasons. But just on the oil question, most of all, Rajdeep, what India has been saying, which is that why are you targeting us specifically, given that China buys more crude than India does from Russia, number one, and so does Turkey, so does Japan also buy crude from Russia. But number two, if India didn't buy Russian crude, it would need to buy it from elsewhere, which would lead to a rise in global crude prices, which would then hurt Donald Trump at home more than anyone else because he cares so much about cheap petrol for people to drive in the summer. So, Rajdeep, it genuinely doesn't add up. I would imagine that this is a negotiating tactic, but even that doesn't make sense because in taking this hard line, he is worsening Indian public opinion against America and constraining the prime minister's options to even strike any sort of deal at this point.
Let me ask you this, Ravi. Is this some kind of a personality disorder that we are dealing with here? Because Donald Trump could have done this out of a fit of pique, some believe out of frustration with India. Has something suddenly changed for Donald Trump, who seemed, or so we thought, to have a good personal equation with Prime Minister Modi, for him to turn on India to the point where he calls India a dead economy?
So these are great questions to ask. I would be lying if I said I had clear answers. One can only guess. I will say this, Rajdeep. There's a big difference between Trump 1 and Trump 2. Trump 2 is less likely to have people around him who understand the intricacies of foreign relations, of geopolitics, the niceties of diplomacy. So that's one thing. There are fewer people restraining Trump from his worst instincts. Two, Trump is not ideological about many things. And we've seen this in the way that he's flip-flopped on Russia in recent weeks, for example. But Trump is, I think, ideological on the issue of tariffs. There is now so much evidence going back to the 1980s that Trump genuinely believes that free trade is bad, that America was being ripped off by the rest of the world, and that Trump wanted to impose tariffs because he thinks this will rebalance the American economy. He believes this despite the disagreement of most mainstream economists in the United States and around the world, which is why I say this is ideological. It's not rational, it's ideological.
How then do you think should India respond to someone like this, someone who you suggest is waging now an ideological crusade on tariffs? How does India secure its national interests?
Very difficult question. I don't think India's done much wrong so far. Look, and India's also been very open over the last 3 years about why it is purchasing Russian crude. It's been open to its own people about needing to purchase the cheapest crude out there. It's been open to the Americans as well. The Biden administration knew that this was happening and they were okay with it because they too needed to control the global price of oil. So none of this should be a surprise. And this is why New Delhi is as confused as it is. In terms of what India should do, look, if India continues to buy Russian crude, the hit to the Indian economy is not as severe as some analysts have been suggesting. I think the difference between what India is paying for Russian crude and what it would pay for, say, Saudi crude is, a 10 to 15% difference. Yes, that will hurt. Yes, it will cause pressure at the pump, but I think the Indian people would be likely to be willing to sustain that longer term. Um, but India could also switch, and it could buy oil from other sources over time, signal that it wants to do that to Trump, and watch what happens in the markets. That will lead to a massive surge in the price of crude, which could then lead Trump to pivot. And that brings me to my last point. Sometimes, Rajdeep, waiting and just doing nothing might be the smartest ploy, because we know that Trump often pivots on issue after issue. So maybe just keeping a cool head, not saying anything rash, knowing that this could revert to normal, and waiting and watching.
You said Trump can pivot at any time. I want to know, what do you think made him pivot on Russia, for example? Till a few months ago, there was a sense that Trump and Putin were going to trying to strike a deal. The war in Ukraine would get over. Now you've got Trump railing against Russia and Putin setting deadlines. What went wrong? Because that seems to be one reason why India is facing the backlash.
So this one is a bit easier to explain than your other questions. I think Trump set himself expectations that were unrealistic. So, on the campaign trail, he said, I can solve this war in one day. I can, forge a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia. I know the Russians very well. I know Putin very well. So he set up all these expectations. It has been 7 months. He invested a lot of personal diplomacy, the diplomacy of his private envoy, Stephen Witkoff, who's met with the Russians several times. Trump also dressed down Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office. So Trump used up a lot of diplomatic capital and energy to make this happen, to make a peace deal happen, and nothing happened. And over time, over the last 2 months, we've seen him lament in public and private that Putin is dragging me along. Putin is making me look bad. And we know that there are few things Trump hates more than being made to look bad. So I think the switch that we're seeing on Russia is Trump recognizing that everything that's happened so far, trying to give Russia the benefit of the doubt, trying to give them the deal they want, it ain't going to work. It's going to make him look bad. And therefore, the alternative is what he needs to pivot towards. But here too, Rajdeep, we should be careful. Trump is being tough on Russia, sure, rhetorically. We haven't seen any real actual measures. And we're kind of back to where we were roughly a year ago under Biden. And that too is a difficult path. So let's say you are going to be tough on Russia. Well, then you also need to arm the Ukrainians. And that's going to cost money. And that's going to cost diplomatic capital in Trump's own base, which doesn't want to arm the Ukrainians. So it could be that Trump may pivot again. We just don't know.
What we also don't know, Ravi, is why is Donald Trump, and I want a real answer, why has he 29 or 30 times insisted that he is the one who got a ceasefire between India and Pakistan? For some reason, there is a belief in India that he wants New Delhi to desperately acknowledge his role in somehow ending Operation Sindoor. Do you think that that's a factor here? Pakistan has already said Trump should get the Nobel Peace Prize. Should India also be playing to his ego in some way and trying to give him credit for the ceasefire after Operation Sindoor?
I think he wants that. Yes, Trump likes flattery. He loves to be known as a peacemaker, as a deal maker. He's written a book called The Art of the Deal. This is something that is, fundamentally something he cares about. I think the Pakistanis, like many others, the Ukrainians have done this too, were very clever, I think, to say, Mr. President, you should win the Nobel Peace Prize. That form of flattery is something a lot of leaders, a lot of CEOs have started doing. It's completely not genuine. It's duplicitous almost, but it seems to work with Trump. So that's why we are where we are. It is petty as well. Look, India, as you know better than anyone, Rajdeep, has invested so much diplomacy over the last 20, 25 years. telling successive American administrations, don't interfere in our internal affairs. We won't interfere in yours. Don't talk about Kashmir. Don't hyphenate India with Pakistan. This is so well known among, Democrats and Republicans on the Hill. It is so well known among any staffers who deal with South Asian issues in the White House at the State Department. The problem is, Rajdeep, Trump isn't listening to them. So what we're seeing is Trump on his own. I'm absolutely certain that there are people in the State Department who've sent him memos saying, don't do this. He's not following their advice, which is why this is so complicated for Indian diplomats and for anyone who believes in the diplomatic architecture anywhere in the world.
Trump's equation with China, Ravi, and his mysterious relationship with Pakistan. Should India be worried about what Trump seems to be doing at the moment with China, carrying on negotiations with them, hosting Asim Munir in Pakistan? Is all of this somewhere affecting India's interests in your view?
Look, Pakistan is a strange one. US-Pakistan ties are not in America's strategic interests. So I'm befuddled that he met with Munir, General Munir. I'm befuddled that this has come up as much as it has. I've heard all the rumors about, why these meetings are taking place. I have no evidence or proof to suggest that there's anything wrong afoot here. I'll just say we have to wait and watch this space. I believe in strategy. Strategically, America should favor relations with India, not Pakistan. Pakistan is a tiny economy in terms of counterterrorism, in terms of strategic interests in the region. There's not much there. Maybe Iran is the one thing Pakistan could help America with, but there's not enough there. China's a different case. I think there are growing signs that Trump may want to travel to Beijing to meet Xi Jinping for a big military parade there. I believe that that could be setting the groundwork for a broader normalization of ties between the two sides. That's entirely possible. And I don't necessarily think that's bad for the world. I don't necessarily think that's bad for India. A lot of good things can come out of it because remember, US-China tensions, were they to get really bad, that is not good for any country on earth. Most countries in the world count count the United States and China as among its top two trading partners. We all need them to get along. So personally, if Trump is opening some avenues to talk to the Chinese, let's encourage that and see where they land.
In conclusion, did India then misread Donald Trump? Or has the world actually misread Donald Trump 2.0?
I don't think India's misread Trump fundamentally. I think India may have had a very good equation with Trump 1, and maybe India is now coming to terms, as the rest of the world is, with the fact that Trump 2 is a very different challenge. Trump 2 isn't listening to his advisors. Trump 2 has fewer advisors to begin with. Trump 2 is looking at a legacy now. Trump 2 is just more autonomous. He's gotten rid of many of the checks and balances that existed before. Trump 2 is also much more prepared than Trump 1. He knows what didn't work the first time around for him and has come in with a plan. He's come in with all the things he's wanted to do for the last 4 years. So am I going to say that India and other countries have underestimated or wrongly assessed Trump 2? I think that's harsh to say that, Rajdeep, because none of us expected this to turn out the way it did. But it is now, and we have to recalibrate.
Final question. What do you then expect in the near term? There was much talk about trade negotiations now taking place later this month, a 21-day window that Trump has given before possibly additional tariffs could set in. Do you believe an Indo-US trade deal is still possible by October end?
I do. A mini deal of some sort is always possible. I will always favor calmer heads, negotiation, appealing to Trump's interests, appealing to mutual strategic interests. And we shouldn't forget in all of this, and I say this to you, but I say this to everyone watching, we shouldn't forget these are the two biggest democracies in the world. There are immense people-to-people ties. There are more than 3 million Indian Americans in the United States. These are two countries with growing defense ties, trade ties, technology ties. This is not the moment to throw that out of the window. This is the moment for both sides to appeal to the mutual interests they have and to the shared future they could have, and for the partnerships they could forge in the Indo-Pacific and more globally. Calmer heads need to prevail, and I think Trump will eventually come round. He is ultimately not completely irrational.
Okay. Ultimately, not completely irrational. Famous last words. Ravi Agarwal, always a pleasure talking to you, for giving us that very fine worldview. Thank you so much for joining me from New York.